Tonight, we'll gently pull back the curtain on a subject that conventional history often prefers to keep shrouded in silence: the day-to-day existence of women who labored in the brothels of Victorian England. While it may seem an unconventional topic for a bedtime story, their lives represent a compelling slice of a forgotten past, a narrative of real women navigating a world that offered them very few choices. If you find comfort in exploring these quiet, overlooked corners of history, a simple like or subscribe to the channel is always deeply appreciated. It helps these stories find others who might enjoy them. I am always endlessly curious to learn where you are all listening from. So, feel free to drop a comment with your city or country and what time the clock shows on your side of the world. Now is the time to settle into your coziest spot. Find that perfect position and just let your body feel heavy and supported by whatever you are resting on. Take a long, slow breath, and as you exhale, let the day's tensions release. Now that you are comfortable and calm, let us begin our journey back in time together. Imagine, just for a moment, that you have woken up in the heart of the British Empire, London, in the year 1857. The dawn is just breaking, a faint gray light filtering into the room, but you are not in a lavish four-poster bed. Your reality is a thin, lumpy mattress filled with coarse horsehair. The only comfort, a single woolen blanket drawn tightly over you. The bed linens are far from fresh, changed weekly at best. They carry a stale, musty odor poorly masked by the faint, lingering scent of cheap lavender water. This is the very first sensation of your day, a far cry from the soft reassurances of the modern world, a raw and immediate introduction to your current existence. A deep, penetrating chill permeates the small room, a cold that settles into your bones. Coal for the little fireplace is a precious commodity, strictly rationed by the madam, especially during these early morning hours before business begins. Your eyes trace the faded floral patterns on the wallpaper, noticing how it peels away at the corners, where the persistent London damp has crept in. An intricate medley of scents defines the space: the ever-present haze of coal, smoke from a million chimneys, the unmistakable foul aroma of the nearby River Thames, thick with mud and raw sewage, and layered over it all, the sweet, cloying smell of the perfumes that are the essential tools of your trade. You are in a rented room at the rear of a house of ill repute, situated in the notorious Haymarket district of London. This establishment is not among the city's worst, far from it. In fact, it maintains a careful veneer of respectability. However, it is certainly not one of the opulent, high-class houses that cater to the wealthiest aristocrats, the kind of place whispered about in gentlemen's clubs. Yours is a mid-tier brothel, a business that runs on discretion and a steady stream of middle-class clientele, occupying a precarious but stable position in the city's vast, complex economy of desire and survival. It is a world unto itself, with its own rules and hierarchies. You are not alone in this small, chilly room. On another narrow bed, just a few feet away, another young woman lies sound asleep, her breathing deep and even. As you shift your own weight, the old iron springs of your mattress protest with a loud creak, a familiar sound in the morning quiet. You stretch your limbs, pointing your toes to feel the tension build, and then gratefully release. A small, private moment of physical awareness before the day's demands begin. It is a brief, stolen instant of peace, taken for yourself before the rhythms of the house and the city outside take hold of your time and your attention. This is your life, a shared life in a confined space. Beyond the grimy window pane, the city of London is already stirring, a vast organism shaking off the slumber of the night. The air carries the distinct clip-clop of horses' hooves striking the cobblestones, a sound that provides a constant rhythm to the city's movements. You can hear the rattle and clatter of wooden cartwheels and the growing chorus of street vendors beginning their morning calls, their voices echoing in the narrow canyons between the tall, soot-stained buildings. Fresh bread, a distant voice shouts, the words carrying for several streets, a simple, wholesome cry that feels strangely out of place in your current surroundings. In this house, you are known as Mary, though that is not the name your mother gave you when you were born. A new name is part of the transformation, a way to separate this life from the one you left behind. You have been a resident of this establishment for almost 2 years, a tenure that has made you a familiar, almost permanent fixture in a world defined by its transience. In this profession, 2 years is a lifetime. It marks you as a survivor, a veteran who has managed to navigate the currents of this dangerous and uncertain life without being swept away entirely, unlike so many others you have known. In your time here, you have watched a steady stream of young women come and go, each a story in herself. Some, the lucky or particularly beautiful ones, managed to move up to more luxurious houses in wealthier districts, securing a better class of clientele. Many others simply vanished, disappearing back into the desperate poverty from which they came, their brief foray into this life, leaving them with nothing. And then there were the others, the ones who fell ill, their coughs worsening, or their bodies failing them until they were quietly removed from the house, never to recover. Their ghosts linger in the memory of the house. You swing your legs out of bed, letting the thin blanket pool around your waist. As you sit up, the bare floorboards are shockingly cold against your feet, a stark contrast to the fleeting warmth of the mattress. Reaching for the woolen shawl that hangs on the bedpost, you wrap it tightly around your shoulders, a small defense against the room's damp chill. On the small table that sits between the two beds, there is a chipped ceramic pitcher and a matching basin for washing. The water inside the pitcher, left overnight, has a thin, delicate film of ice covering its surface, a testament to the brutal cold of a London winter. Without proper heating, with a single finger, you break the fragile sheet of ice in the basin, the frigid water stinging your skin with an intensity that sharpens your senses. You cup your hands, gathering the icy water and splashing it onto your face. The shock of it is absolute, stealing your breath for a moment before your body adjusts, and your breathing steadies into a regular rhythm again. It is a harsh awakening, a daily ritual of endurance that leaves no room for lingering drowsiness. In this life, you learn to become fully alert quickly, to face the day head-on without complaint, for there is no one to complain to. This small, painful act is your first victory of the day. Let us pause for a moment to consider how you arrived in this room, in this particular life, because your story may not be what you expect. The popular penny dreadfuls and sensationalist newspapers would have you believe that women like you were all victims of nefarious plots, kidnapped as children, or sold into servitude by cruel families. Or perhaps they would tell the tragic tale of a beautiful young woman seduced and then cruelly abandoned by a wealthy gentleman, left pregnant and with no other recourse. While those stories certainly happened to some, and their tragedies were real, your own path was far more ordinary, and therefore far more representative of the truth for most. No, your journey into this profession was not a dramatic fall from grace, but a quiet, calculated decision born of desperation. It was a choice made with a clear head, weighing one form of misery against another. Your story is not one of villainy or moral failure, but of a grim economic reality. You represent the thousands of women in Victorian London for whom prostitution was not an act of sin, but an act of survival. It was a trade, like any other, entered into when all other avenues led to starvation, or the even greater horrors of the workhouse, a fate more feared than death itself by the respectable poor. Before you were Mary, you were a seamstress, and a very good one at that. Your fingers were nimble and quick, your eye for a straight seam, and a perfect stitch was keen and reliable. But your skill mattered little in a city, overflowing with women just like you. There were thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, of seamstresses in London, all desperately competing for the same meagerly paid work, driving the wages down to a pittance. You were just one more anonymous woman, hunched over a piece of fine linen, your talent lost in a sea of identical, interchangeable workers, each one easily replaced by the next hungry girl willing to work for even less. As one contemporary journal, the British Quarterly, rightly observed, the drudgery of a dressmaker's apprentice made the toil of factory work seem like mere play. And they were not exaggerating. Your days consisted of 14, sometimes 16, punishing hours of labor, your back aching and your eyes straining in the dim, flickering gaslight. In the winter, the unheated rooms would leave your fingers cracked and bleeding, staining the very fabrics you worked so hard to keep pristine. And the reward for this slow, methodical self-destruction, starvation wages that were barely enough to cover the rent on a single, squalid room. The memory of your breaking point remains etched in your mind with perfect, chilling clarity. It was the heart of a bitter winter 3 years ago, a time when the cold seemed to have a physical weight. You had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days, and the small room you rented was entirely unheated. You could see your own breath misting in the frigid air. As you worked frantically to finish a commissioned garment, a piece of work that might, if you were lucky, pay just enough for another week's lodging. The alternative was being turned out onto the street, a prospect too terrifying to contemplate. Survival had been reduced to a single, desperate race against time. Your fingers were so numb with cold that you repeatedly pricked them with the needle, leaving tiny, almost invisible spots of your own blood on the fine white linen you were sewing. It was then that a girl you once knew, Jane, came to visit you. You had worked together briefly at a dressmaker's shop, but the Jane who stood before you now was transformed. She looked healthy, her cheeks full and colored, her body better fed. She wore a simple woolen dress that, while not fashionable by the standards of the upper classes, was clean, warm, and well made a world away from the rags you were wearing. Jane had brought food with her, actual hot food. It was a meat pie, still steaming in its paper wrapping, and you devoured it with a desperation you tried, and failed, to hide. As you ate, she sat with you in the growing twilight of your freezing room, watching you with a compassionate gaze. When you had finished, she finally spoke. "There's a place," she said, her voice low and steady. "A house just off Haymarket. The madam is a strict woman, but she is fair. There's no cruelty there, and no funny business." She was offering you not just a meal, but a lifeline. Jane continued, laying out the terms of this potential new life, as if it were a simple business proposition. "You get 2 hot meals a day, and a decent bed to sleep in," she explained, her eyes watching your face for a reaction. She then added the most crucial detail, "and there are weekly medical checks to make sure everyone stays healthy." She paused, letting the information sink in before delivering the final, compelling argument. "Mary," she said, her voice softening, "you could make in a single night what you make in an entire week of this." She gestured pointedly at the pile of sewing that was slowly killing you. You did not answer her right away, the proposition hanging in the cold air between you. You had been raised properly in a home that feared God and valued a woman's virtue above all else. But those values seemed a distant luxury now. Your parents were dead. Your brothers had scattered across the country in search of their own meager work, and you were utterly alone. Here you were, a respectable seamstress, slowly and inexorably starving to death, one painstaking stitch at a time. The choice was not between virtue and sin. It was between a swift, lonely death in a freezing room and a different, more uncertain kind of survival. The weight of that memory settles over you, and you feel yourself sink a little deeper into the lumpy mattress, your breath slowing in the quiet of the room. But the past must recede, for the house itself is beginning to stir around you. You hear the heavy, purposeful footsteps of Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, on the stairs. Below, there is the distinct clatter of a coal scuttle being emptied, and the faint, promising crackle of a fire being lit in the downstairs parlor, where the customers will eventually wait. Soon, the rich, invigorating scent of real coffee, not the cheap chicory substitute, drifts up from the kitchen, a small but significant luxury this house prides itself on. Beside you, your roommate turns in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible, before settling back into a deep slumber. Her name in this house is Lily, and she is younger than you by several years, perhaps 19 to your 24. She possesses a mane of vibrant auburn hair that the gentlemen who visit seem to find particularly captivating. She once confided in you that she came here from a textile factory in Manchester, a place of relentless, deafening noise. The constant, thunderous clatter of the industrial looms had left her partially deaf in one ear, a permanent injury from her time in a respectable trade. It is time to properly get up and face the day. There are strict routines to be followed in this house, and expectations that must be met without fail. Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, runs the establishment with the precision of a military officer, and she does not tolerate tardiness or laziness from the girls. The madam herself, a woman addressed respectfully as Mrs. Cartwright to her face, expects every woman to be downstairs, fully dressed and presentable by noon each day. Though when she is out of earshot, the girls have their own, less formal name for her. Cardi, a small, secret act of rebellion in a life of rules. The entire brothel operates according to a meticulously planned schedule, a rhythm that dictates the flow of every day and night. The morning hours are reserved for personal time, for cleaning the house, for bathing, and for getting as much rest as possible. The afternoons are generally quieter, seeing only a few regular customers, often businessmen on extended lunch breaks, or men with predictable weekly habits. It is the evenings and the deep nights that are the heart of the business, the busiest and most profitable hours, when the house is often filled to capacity with men seeking escape and entertainment, until the early hours of the morning. Even in this quiet morning moment, the performance has begun. You reach for a small tin on your bedside table and take out a lump of beeswax, warming it between your palms before smoothing it over your chapped lips. This is another of the house's small, required luxuries. Mrs. Cartwright is relentlessly insistent that the girls take care of their appearance. You are selling an illusion. Girls, she often lectures, her voice sharp and pragmatic. Gentlemen do not pay to see the grim reality of a working woman's life. They pay for a fantasy, and her logic, you have to admit, is the foundation of her success. As you stand up from the bed, you find yourself nodding slightly in agreement with the madam's philosophy. It is good advice. After all, the vast majority of the men who walk through the door of this house are not seeking reality. They have more than enough of that in their own respectable lives. With their respectable wives and respectable homes, they come here seeking a fantasy, an escape into a world where they can feel special or powerful, or perhaps simply be seen for who they are or who they wish they were. Your job is to build that fantasy, to become whatever character they require for the brief time they have purchased. Standing up, Mary stretches her entire body, reaching her arms toward the low, water-stained ceiling. She feels the satisfying pull through her muscles, a long, deep stretch that is a purely personal pleasure. Her nightdress, a simple garment of plain cotton, bears no resemblance to the elaborate silk, and lace confections she is required to wear for her evening work. It falls simply around her ankles as she moves. This is a moment of reconnection with her own physical form, not as an object to be appraised or used, but as a living, breathing body. It is a brief but necessary grounding, a quiet assertion of self, before she begins the methodical process of dressing for the day ahead. She moves toward the small wardrobe to select her day clothes. When not actively entertaining a client, she and the other women wear the ordinary, practical attire of any other working woman in London. It is a costume of a different sort, a costume of invisibility. This discretion is paramount, while the operation of a brothel itself exists in a legal gray area. The act of public solicitation is a crime, and drawing attention on the street could invite unwanted scrutiny from the police. Although established houses like this one often pay bribes for a degree of protection, maintaining a facade of simple domesticity is the surest way to be left alone. Mary selects a dark blue dress, a practical garment that is slightly faded, but has been carefully mended by her own skilled hands. Getting dressed is a much slower and more deliberate process now than it will be later in the evening, when she might need to change outfits quickly between customers. She takes her time, enjoying the familiar routine of it. She pulls on her stockings first, then a simple petticoat, followed by her corset. During the daytime, the corset is not laced to the punishing tightness required for the fashionable evening silhouette. It is worn loosely, providing just enough structure and support for the day's chores, without restricting her breath. As she methodically fastens her clothing, her mind drifts to the day that lies ahead. Tuesday is typically a quiet day for business. Perhaps she will see a few of the regular afternoon clients. There is Mr. Phillips, a clerk from a nearby bank, who visits every other week like clockwork. His visits are strange. He seems to desire conversation more than anything else, often spending most of his paid hour excitedly discussing his extensive stamp collection. Or maybe she will be visited by the nervous young man who calls himself Mr. Smith, a timid soul who never looks her in the eye and never stays for more than 15 minutes. The sounds of London's morning crescendo outside her window. A gaggle of children runs past on the street below, their shrill, laughing voices rising above the general urban din, followed by the sharp barking of a stray dog. A street vendor begins his melodic, repetitive call. Knives to grind. The sheer normality of it all sometimes strikes her as profoundly strange. This life, this work that respectable society condemns as the ultimate form of female degradation, is happening right here, nestled invisibly alongside the most ordinary aspects of London life. The contrast is a constant, quiet hum beneath the surface of her days. This strange coexistence is evident in every daily transaction. The local baker, for instance, delivers fresh bread to the brothel's back door each morning, just as he does to the respectable boarding house next door, offering a cheerful greeting to cook. The coalman, the iceman, the laundress, they all come and go, providing the same essential services to this house that they provide to any other household in the neighborhood. They are all threads in the same great tapestry of commerce, their livelihoods interwoven with the very business they are meant to shun. Their silent complicity makes the entire moral structure of the city feel like a fragile, elaborate performance. She sits on the edge of her bed, taking a moment to simply breathe before facing the day. In through her nose and out through her mouth, a slow, calming rhythm. Just as she feels herself settle, there is a quiet, respectful knock at the door. Hot water, miss comes the young, cheerful voice of Betsy, the house's maid of all work. Betsy is only 13 years old, far too young to be involved in the main business of the house. She is a girl hovering on the precipice between childhood and the harsh realities of the world that has already claimed the other women in the house. Mrs. Cartwright, the madam, had found Betsy begging on the street a year ago, half-starved and dressed in rags, and had taken her in. It was an act of what could pass for charity in this world. Now, Betsy helps the housekeeper with endless chores, runs errands, and sleeps in a tiny, cramped room off the kitchen. For now, she is protected, a status that makes her luckier than many destitute children on London streets. But everyone in the house knows this protection is temporary. In a few years, when she has blossomed into a young woman, it is almost certain that she will be expected to join the other girls in their work. "Come in," Betsy Mary calls out, her voice warm. The young girl enters, carrying a large, heavy jug of steaming water, her face freshly scrubbed, and her brown hair pulled back in a neat, tidy braid. "Morning, Miss Mary," she says with a genuine cheerfulness that brightens the chilly room. "It's a cold one today." "Mrs. Winters says we might even get snow later," Mary thanks her, with a sincere smile. A moment of simple, uncomplicated kindness between them. This brief interaction is a reminder of the strange, almost familial bonds that can form in the most unlikely of households. "Had your breakfast yet?" Mary asks the young maid. "Yes," Miss Betsy replies brightly. "Cook made porridge with treacle." She adds that there is fresh coffee and bread in the kitchen for the girls. This is another of the crucial things that sets this house apart from the truly desperate establishments. Here, the women receive regular, decent meals. In the worst sort of brothels, girls might be fed only scraps or go hungry entirely if business was slow. But Mrs. Cartwright is a shrewd businesswoman. She understands that well-fed, healthy girls are better for business, more energetic, and far more profitable in the long run. After Betsy leaves, Mary pours the hot water into the basin, enjoying the simple luxury of the rising steam. She washes herself methodically, the routine of it both soothing and grounding. Face first, then her neck and arms, and finally a quick, private rinse of her most intimate areas. This daily ritual is more than just about hygiene. It is a way of reclaiming her own body, of washing away the residue of the previous night's work, and starting the day feeling fresh and human. It's a small but significant act of self-care in a life that constantly demands the giving of oneself to others. This moment, at least, is entirely for her. Full bathing in this house happens twice a week, on Wednesdays and Sundays, a significant undertaking that involves hauling a large copper tub into the kitchen and heating kettles of water over the range. It is a standard of cleanliness that is, ironically, far more frequent and thorough than many respectable working-class women in London could ever hope to manage. In the overcrowded tenements, where most of the city's poor lived, hot water was a rare luxury, and a full bath might be a monthly or even yearly event. Here, cleanliness is not a luxury, but a professional necessity, another strange paradox of her existence. Once washed and feeling more herself, Mary runs a comb through her thick, dark brown hair, which falls halfway down her back when it is let loose. For the daytime hours, she twists it into a simple, functional knot at the nape of her neck, a style that is neat and keeps it out of her way while she works on her chores. Later, when she prepares for her evening work, the transformation will be dramatic. She will style her hair more elaborately, using an artificial hairpiece made of horsehair or even human hair to add fashionable volume and a cascade of curls. Each hairstyle is a different kind of costume for a different kind of performance. She glances at her reflection in the small, age-spotted mirror that is propped on the dresser. There is no denying that she looks healthier now than she ever did during her time as a seamstress. The regular, plentiful food has filled out the desperate hollows in her cheeks and brought a healthier color back to her skin. But it is her eyes that show the true change. They have lost their former innocence. They are more guarded now, more watchful, holding a depth of knowledge that the young, naive girl from the countryside could never have imagined. They are the eyes of someone who has seen too much of the world's hidden machinery. She consciously shakes off the moment of somber reflection. It is of no use to dwell on such thoughts. They are a path to melancholy, a luxury she cannot afford. Instead, she focuses her mind on the practical, immediate tasks of the day, lacing up her sturdy boots with practiced, efficient fingers. Each movement is precise and familiar, a rhythm that helps to quiet her mind. Once she is downstairs, her first task will be to eat breakfast, and then she will help with the general cleaning of the house. Every girl is assigned specific duties, a rule enforced by Mrs. Cartwright, who firmly believes that idle hands are the devil's workshop. Lily finally sits up in her own bed, yawning and pushing a tangle of auburn hair from her face. Had that dream again, she mumbles, her voice still thick with sleep. The one about the seaside. Have you ever been to the sea? Mary thinks for a moment, the question conjuring a distant, hazy memory. Once she says, to Brighton, when I was very small. A rare family outing. The memory is faint, more a feeling of sunshine and the strange smell of salt than a clear picture. For most of London's poor, the sea was as distant and unattainable as the moon. I'd like to go someday, Lily says, her voice becoming wistful and soft. They say the air is different there, cleaner, that you can breathe properly. This is a deeply cherished and common dream among the women of the house. They all talk of saving enough money to escape the filth and noise of London, to start a fresh, clean life somewhere else, perhaps by the sea. It is a beautiful, fragile hope. Mary has seen a few women manage it over the years, but they are the rare exceptions. Most, she knows, never will. The money that seems so substantial compared to the pittance earned by other working women has a way of simply melting away. A significant portion goes directly back to the madam for room and board. More money is required for the clothes, cosmetics, and other necessities of the job, which are a constant expense. And then there are the small comforts and luxuries, a ribbon, a sweet treat, a small glass of gin, that make this difficult life bearable. On top of it all, life itself has a way of consuming whatever small buffer you try to build. A sudden toothache that requires a dentist, a dress torn beyond repair, or a friend who is in even more desperate need than you are. Leaving her room, Mary closes the door quietly and steps into the narrow, dimly lit hallway with its worn carpet. The layout of the house is a testament to Mrs. Cartwright's careful management. The ground floor contains the public rooms, the parlor and dining room, as well as the kitchen and servants' quarters at the back. Crucially, the madam's personal bedroom and private office are also on this floor, a strategic position that allows her to discreetly monitor all the comings and goings of both the girls and their customers. Nothing happens in this house without her knowledge. It is her small, tightly controlled kingdom. The house itself is a narrow, tall building squeezed tightly between two similar structures on a quiet side street. From the outside, it is impeccably maintained. The curtains in the windows are always clean. The front door is freshly painted, and the brass knocker is polished to a high shine. There is absolutely nothing to identify it as a brothel. There is no infamous red light in the window, no obvious sign of any kind. This veneer of respectability is essential. Customers find their way here through a hidden network, by word of mouth, through discreet coded advertisements in certain men's publications, or via the city's cab drivers and hotel porters who receive a commission for every gentleman they direct this way. As Mary descends the stairs, the rich aroma of coffee grows stronger, mingling now with the comforting smells of baking bread and frying bacon, making her stomach rumble in anticipation. She runs her hand along the smooth wooden banister, its surface polished by years of hands just like hers. The house is beginning to warm up as the fires are lit, pushing back the persistent London chill, at least within these walls. From the kitchen, she can hear the housekeeper's sharp voice, giving instructions to the cook. For a moment, with these normal, domestic sounds filling the air, it could almost be any respectable household starting its day. The kitchen table is a large, rectangular piece of furniture, its wooden surface scarred and marked by decades of use. 8 chairs are squeezed tightly around it, enough for the 5 girls currently working in the house, along with Mrs. Winters, Betsy, and the cook. Mrs. Cartwright herself takes all her meals separately in her private sitting room. It is another way she maintains the professional distance she believes is necessary for proper management. And to uphold her authority, Mary slips into her usual chair, the wood smooth and worn beneath her, the seat shaped by countless bodies that have come and gone before her. The other girls begin to filter into the kitchen, one by one, each bringing the weight of her own story. First comes Emily, a petite blonde who has been at the house for about 6 months and still has a nervous energy about her. She is followed by Sarah, who at nearly 30 is older than most of the women here. Sarah has a sharp, no-nonsense attitude and a surprising talent for numbers, which has led to her occasionally assisting Mrs. Cartwright with the account books. Last to arrive is Josephine, the newest girl, who is still adjusting to the rhythms and demands of this life, her eyes often puffy and red from private tears shed in the night. The coffee served here is another of the house's small but significant luxuries. It is real coffee, strong and hot, not the cheap chicory and roasted grain substitute that most working-class households would drink. Breakfast is a mostly quiet affair, with an unspoken rule against discussing the business of the house so early in the day. Instead, the conversation is deliberately mundane, drifting from the weather to a funny story about the butcher's bot. This performance of normalcy is profoundly important. It is a daily ritual that serves as a vital reminder that this is not just a place of work, but also a home where people live, eat, and sleep. After breakfast, the day's chores commence. The house runs on a strict, predictable schedule with specific tasks assigned to each of the girls. This is not just for efficiency. Mrs. Cartwright firmly believes that routine and responsibility are essential for maintaining order and preventing the chaos and despair that she has seen plague so many less well-run establishments. Today, Mary's morning duty is to dust the parlor and polish the glassware in the bar area. The simple, repetitive tasks are almost meditative, allowing her mind to wander peacefully while her hands remain busy. The parlor is the primary public room of the house, the stage where customers are first received. Its decoration is a masterful study in calculated respectability, with just a hint of carefully curated luxury. The furniture is solid, made of dark, polished wood and upholstered in a deep red velvet that, while slightly worn on the arms, remains plush and inviting. During the day, heavy curtains of a matching shade are tied back to allow what little London sunlight can penetrate the perpetual haze of coal smoke. The walls are adorned with several carefully chosen paintings, mostly serene landscapes, with a single, mildly suggestive classical scene of draped nymphs. that hints at the room's true purpose without being vulgar. Mary then turns her attention to the small bar tucked into a corner of the room. It is not an elaborate setup, merely a handsome cabinet containing a selection of spirits and rows of sparkling glasses. Most gentlemen are offered a glass of sherry or brandy upon their arrival, a social nicety that helps to ease the inherent awkwardness of the transaction and create a relaxed atmosphere. The glasses require constant polishing, as they quickly develop a dull film in London's perpetually damp and grimy air, even when they haven't been used. The repetitive, circular motion of polishing each glass is almost hypnotic, a familiar physical rhythm that occupies her hands, while her mind remains peacefully adrift. Her meditative work is interrupted by the sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by the heavy tread of a man's footsteps in the hallway. She then hears Mrs. Cartwright's voice, her tone professional yet welcoming, pitched lower than the voice she uses with the girls. "Good morning, Doctor. Thank you for coming so promptly. It is Wednesday, which means it is medical examination day. Every week, without fail, the doctor visits the house to check each of the girls for any signs of venereal disease, the invisible scourge of their profession. This weekly examination is one of Mrs. Cartwright's most inviolable rules, and it is a key reason why her establishment maintains its solid reputation among a better class of clientele. In many of the city's lower-class brothels, disease is allowed to run rampant, with devastating and often fatal consequences for both the women and their customers. Here, any girl showing the slightest symptom is immediately removed from the work roster and given treatment. This policy is expensive in the short term, but Mrs. Cartwright understands that it is a crucial investment in the long-term health and viability of her business. While waiting for her turn with the doctor, Mary retrieves her personal laundry and carries it to the scullery at the back of the house. Each girl is responsible for washing her own intimate items. The house laundress handles only the sheets, towels, and other large pieces. The scullery is a cool space with a stone floor and a large sink. The physical act of washing is deeply satisfying, a rhythmic and methodical task that transforms the soiled into the as she works the soap into the fabric, her hands moving through the cloudy water. This quiet, necessary chore gives her a moment of solitude to gather her thoughts before the impending examination. The doctor's weekly visit is always a sobering occasion, a stark and unavoidable reminder of the profound risks inherent in this life. It brings to the forefront the constant, simmering fear of the diseases that could ravage a woman's body, bringing with them not only pain and grotesque disfigurement, but also, all too often, a slow and lonely death. Mary has seen it happen to other girls, a persistent cough that never gets better, suspicious sores that refuse to heal. These are the dreaded signs that a girl will soon vanish from the house, destined for a charity hospital if she is lucky, or left to suffer and die alone in some wretched garret if she is not. She has, thus far, been fortunate. She has been careful, and Mrs. Cartwright insists on certain precautions being taken with all customers' methods that are not foolproof, but are certainly better than nothing. The weekly examinations are designed to catch any problems early, when treatment might still be effective. Still, a cold knot of fear tightens in her stomach whenever she thinks about it. She knows that this luck cannot last forever. Very few women manage to survive in this profession for more than a few years without contracting some kind of illness. It is the ultimate calculated risk, weighing the certainty of starvation in the respectable world against the possibility of disease in this one. Carrying the basket of damp, clean laundry, Mary steps out into the small yard behind the kitchen to hang her things. A clothesline is stretched from the house to a post by the far wall, and she carefully secures each item with a wooden peg. The yard itself is tiny and enclosed, with just a few struggling plants in pots, but it is open to the sky. After the stuffy, enclosed atmosphere of the house, she pauses for a moment just to breathe the outside air. It is not fresh by any rural standard, forever tainted with London smoke, but it is cooler and cleaner than the air inside. She tilts her face up, feeling the weak winter sunlight on her skin, a rare moment of pure, simple pleasure. Her quiet moment is interrupted when the back door opens, and Lily pokes her head out. "The doctor's almost finished with me. You're next," she says, before noticing Mary's upturned face, and adding a wry comment about the scut. Lily's own examination had gone well. She was given a clean bill of health, but then her voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper. Josephine wasn't, though, she adds. "I heard Mrs. Cartwright telling her she's on rest for at least a week. Medicine 3 times a day." The news, though not surprising, lands with a heavy thud, a concrete reminder of the sword that hangs perpetually over all of their heads. Summoned by a bell from the front of the house, Mary makes her way to Mrs. Cartwright's private sitting room. The room has been temporarily transformed for the doctor's visit. The madam's elegant rosewood desk, normally covered with papers and ornaments, is now cleared and draped with a clean white cloth. Upon it rest the instruments of the doctor's trade: a stethoscope, several small glass bottles containing various solutions, and his notebook and pencil. The room's comfortable armchair has been pushed aside to make space for a simple, straight-backed wooden chair, positioned carefully to catch the best light from the window. Dr. Harrison is a man of about 50, with graying hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He is a rare exception among the physicians who serve this industry. Unlike many of his colleagues, he does not treat the women with contempt or unnecessary roughness. His manner is entirely professional, his touch clinical and detached, rather than punitive or leering. He wears a wedding ring and has on occasion mentioned his children attending university. Mary sometimes finds herself wondering what his respectable family would think if they knew about this part of his medical practice, about his work with women like her. Mary," he says, looking up from washing his hands. "How have you been keeping?" Any concerns to report this standard opening is a small but significant courtesy, an acknowledgement of her as a person, rather than just a body to be inspected. The examination itself is swift but thorough. He checks her breathing and heart rate, examines her throat and eyes, and then proceeds to the more intimate check. His touch quick and impersonal, his hands protected by thin gloves. During this part, Mary has learned to mentally detach herself, to let her thoughts drift to other things: the book waiting in her room, the taste of a sweet bun, the memory of sunshine on her face. All appears to be in order, the doctor says finally, stepping back and making a note in his book. Mrs. Cartwright, who has been sitting discreetly in the corner as a chaperone, rises to escort Mary to the door. The examination always leaves her with a strange, hollow feeling. It is not because of any pain or physical discomfort. Dr. Harrison is always gentle. It is the profound and unsettling experience of being reduced, however briefly, to a mere collection of bodily functions, a specimen to be assessed and judged for its fitness for purpose. It is a necessary procedure for her own protection, yet the emotional emptiness that follows is undeniable. The hallway clock strikes 12, its chimes marking the arrival of midday. The morning, filled with chores and the tension of the doctor's visit, has passed quickly. Now, the house settles into its afternoon mode. There might be customers arriving as early as 1 o'clock, typically businessmen taking long, discreet lunch breaks. These are often regular clients who know that the quieter afternoon hours mean they will receive more personal attention and have less chance of waiting or encountering other men. For now, however, there is a brief lull, a collective breath taken by the house before the afternoon's business begins. Back in the sanctuary of her own room, Mary catches her reflection in the small, spotted mirror. Her cheeks are slightly flushed from the warmth of the kitchen, and her hair is still neat from her morning brushing. She sees an ordinary-looking young woman in a simple dress, a person who would be entirely indistinguishable from the thousands of other maids, shop girls, and governesses walking the streets of London at that very moment. There is nothing that visibly marks her as what society would call a fallen woman. There is no scarlet letter, no outward sign of the moral condemnation that is supposed to define her existence. The thought brings a small, wry smile to her lips. The immense, staggering hypocrisy of it all never ceases to strike her. This is a society that publicly and loudly condemns women like her, holding them up as symbols of sin and degradation. Yet, it is the very same society that creates the brutal economic conditions that make this life a necessary choice for so many. And, most gallingly, it is the men from that same respectable society who supply the constant demand that makes this business so profitable. The entire system is a grand, contradictory performance, and she is one of its principal, though silent, actors. Such philosophical musings, however true, will not get her through the afternoon's work. She opens her small chest of clothes and considers what to wear. She will not choose her finest things. Those are reserved for the evenings when the wealthier, more discerning customers arrive. For the afternoon, she needs something that is a step above her plain morning work dress. She selects a blue cotton dress with slightly more fashionable lines and a touch of simple lace at the collar. It is an outfit carefully chosen to be respectable enough not to alarm a new customer, yet attractive enough to entice. After changing, she sits on the edge of her bed for a moment, deliberately steadying herself. She breathes slowly and deeply, in through her nose and out through her mouth. This is a crucial part of her process, preparing herself mentally for the shift from Mary, the private person, to Mary, the professional persona. This separation is a vital, protective boundary, a mental wall she has learned to construct that helps her preserve some core of her true self amid the constant demands and performances of her work. The solid reality of the mattress beneath her and the texture of the blanket help to center her in the present moment. Just as she feels her mind settle, she hears the sound from downstairs that signals the start of the workday. The front door opening and then closing, followed by the murmur of voices in the hallway. She recognizes Mrs. Cartwright's smooth, professional tone of welcome and a man's deeper voice in response. The afternoon has officially begun. Mary rises from the bed, smoothing her dress one last time. She takes a final, deep breath, filling her lungs completely, and then releasing it slowly, feeling a wave of tension flow away with the exhale. She is ready now. When Mary reaches the bottom of the stairs, she finds the parlor already occupied. Mrs. Cartwright is standing elegantly near the fireplace, speaking with a visitor. The man has his back to her. He appears to be middle-aged, with a solid posture, and is dressed in a well-cut, but not ostentatious dark coat, a businessman. Most likely, she pauses in the doorway, waiting to be acknowledged, as is the protocol. And here is Mary now, the madam says smoothly, giving her a slight nod of permission to enter. Mary, this gentleman was just asking after some pleasant company for an hour or so. The visitor turns, revealing a face that confirms her initial impression. He is around 45, with graying temples and a polite but slightly awkward expression. He is clearly a new customer. He introduces himself as Charles Wilson, likely an alias, and she curtsies, as is the custom. Mrs. Cartwright gestures toward the small bar. Would you care for some refreshment? Mr. Wilson, a glass of sherry. Perhaps this offer of a drink is an essential part of the ritual. It creates the all-important illusion of a respectable social call, transforming what is a straightforward commercial transaction into something more palatable. Mr. Wilson accepts the sherry, and while Mrs. Cartwright pours the drink, Mary studies him more carefully. His clothes are of good quality, but show slight signs of wear. He is doing well for himself, but is not extravagantly wealthy. The madam hands him the drink, and then excuses herself with practiced discretion, leaving the two of them alone. To become acquainted, the dance begins. Is this your first visit to Mrs. Cartwright's establishment, she asks, her voice soft and refined. The initial conversation is always a delicate, predictable performance designed to put a nervous new client at ease. The conversation continues for several minutes, light and impersonal, touching on the weather and a recent exhibition at the Crystal Palace. He seems to be a lonely man, perhaps a widower, someone seeking not just a physical act, but a measure of human warmth and connection. The transaction that follows is unremarkable. He stays for the full hour he is paid for, though the physical act itself occupies only a small portion of that time. The remainder is spent in quiet conversation, his head resting on her shoulder as she gently strokes his hair. This, too, is part of what he has purchased, the soothing, temporary illusion of being cared for. Once the time is up, heralded by a discreetly chiming clock in the hallway, Mr. Wilson departs. After he is gone, Mary begins the part of the job that customers never witness, the methodical cleaning and resetting of the room. She efficiently strips the used sheet from the bed, bundling it for the laundry, and replaces it with a fresh one from the chest. At the washstand, she cleanses herself thoroughly with a cloth and water. This ritual is crucial not only for hygiene, but for her own sense of psychological separation between encounters, ensuring that each client remains a distinct and contained event. With the room restored to pristine order, Mary allows herself a moment of quiet pause before returning downstairs. The time immediately after a customer leaves is strangely peaceful. It is a breath between words, a pause between acts in the ongoing play of her life. She stands in the middle of the room, feeling the solid floorboards beneath her feet, listening to the house's faint, familiar sounds, the ticking of the clock, a distant clatter from the kitchen. She consciously lets her shoulders drop, her breathing falling into a natural rhythm. This moment of stillness is a small act of reclamation, a brief pocket of time that belongs only to her. The kitchen is warm and comforting after the slightly chilly blue room, a sanctuary where the women often gather in their free moments. Lily and Emily are already at the table, sharing a pot of tea and exchanging stories about their afternoon clients. Since the afternoon has been slow, Mary decides she will go out for a little while to run some errands. This is a permitted activity, even encouraged by Mrs. Cartwright, who believes that a bit of fresh air and an occasional glimpse of normal life helps to keep the girls from becoming too despondent or restless, as long as she is back well before the busy evening rush begins. The madam has no objection. Out on the street, she joins the bustling flow of afternoon activity. Delivery carts rumble over the cobblestones, and servants in uniform hurry on errands for their employers, their faces set with purpose. In her plain dress and dark wool shawl, Mary is entirely anonymous, indistinguishable from any other young woman in the crowd. No one who glances her way would ever guess her true profession. There is a profound and exhilarating sense of freedom in this invisibility, in the simple pleasure of walking at her own pace and choosing her own direction, unobserved and unjudged. For these few precious moments, this fantasy of normality, however, has its limits. As she walks, she is acutely aware of the invisible lines that divide the city, the unspoken boundaries she must not cross. The respectable tea room, where ladies in fine hats meet their friends for gossip and cakes, is not a place for her. The shops selling expensive silks and bonnets are off limits. The tall, imposing spire of the local church seems to follow her with judgmental, invisible eyes, a silent reminder of her place in the social order. Even in the midst of this bustling, anonymous crowd, she is reminded that she is, and always will be, an outsider. Her errands are simple: a packet of black hairpins from the haberdashery, and some writing paper from the stationer's. On her way back, she indulges in a small, personal luxury, a jam tart purchased from the baker's shop. The pastry is still slightly warm, and the strawberry filling is intensely sweet and tangy on her tongue. She eats it as she walks, savoring each bite and licking a stray dollop of jam from her finger with simple, unashamed pleasure. In a life where long-term hopes are precarious, it is these small, immediate joys and satisfactions that become the true currency of her daily existence. By the time she returns, the quality of the light has changed, the shadows are lengthening, and the air has taken on the golden hue of approaching sunset. The moment she steps back inside the house, she can feel a shift in the atmosphere. It is charged with a new and subtle energy, a sense of purpose and anticipation. Upstairs, she can hear doors opening and closing and voices calling between the rooms as the evening preparations get underway. The quiet, domestic rhythm of the daytime is receding, replaced by the faster, more demanding pace of the evening's business. The upstairs hallway is a scene of purposeful activity. The women move between their rooms, borrowing a ribbon or a piece of jewelry, calling out advice on hairstyles, and helping one another with the difficult-to-reach buttons and hooks on the backs of their evening gowns. This period of evening preparation is both an individual and a communal ritual. While each woman is responsible for her own appearance, there is a shared sense of camaraderie and mutual support, a collective effort to transform themselves for the roles they are about to play. It is a performance, and they are all helping each other get into costume. In her room, Mary begins her own transformation. After a more thorough washing, she takes out her evening attire, a dress of deep blue silk, its color flattering to her dark hair and eyes. She methodically builds the evening's silhouette, fresh undergarments, a corset laced more tightly than for daytime, and layers of petticoats. Her hair is arranged in an elaborate style, with soft curls framing her face. A subtle touch of cosmetics rice powder, a hint of rouge, and a dab of lavender water complete the effect. The ordinary woman in the mirror is gone, replaced by a more refined and alluring creature. Dinner this evening is served in the formal dining room rather than the cozy kitchen, another distinction that marks the shift in the house's routine. The table is set properly with clean linen and decent cutlery. Mrs. Cartwright herself joins the girls for this meal, her presence at the head of the table reinforcing the high standards she expects for the night ahead. The food is hearty and plentiful, a rich beef stew and fresh bread, designed to provide ample energy for the long hours of work to come. A single glass of wine is served to each woman, just enough to create a pleasant warmth without dulling their wits. The conversation around the dinner table is a mix of professional preparation and ordinary workplace gossip. The women discuss the evening's definite bookings and speculate about which regular customers might make an appearance. They share information about the men's habits and preferences, a shared pool of knowledge that helps them navigate their encounters more safely and profitably. Mrs. Cartwright listens more than she speaks, occasionally interjecting to correct a detail or to give a final reminder. Remember, quality of service, not quantity, is what maintains our reputation. After dinner, the women disperse for their final preparations before gathering in the parlor to await the first clients. The room has been transformed for the night. The heavy curtains are drawn, and the gas lamps are lit and adjusted to cast a warm, flattering glow that softens the room's edges and hides any imperfections. A decanter of sherry and a dish of sugared almonds stand ready. Dressed in their fine evening gowns, the women arrange themselves artfully on the sofas and armchairs, the picture of elegant, leisured companionship, ready for the curtain to rise on the evening's performance. The hallway clock chimes 8, its resonant sound echoing through the quiet house. Almost at the exact same moment, a sharp knock sounds at the front door. The first customer of the evening has arrived, precisely on time. Mrs. Cartwright appears in the parlor doorway, a commanding presence in her dark purple silk. "Emily," she says, her voice calm and clear. "Mr. Harrington has arrived. He's asked for you specifically." Emily sets down her teacup, rises gracefully from the sofa, and follows the madam out of the room to begin the intricate, carefully managed process of the transaction. Barely 10 minutes pass before another knock comes, and Sarah is summoned for a regular client. After she leaves, Lily leans toward Mary, her voice a low whisper. "I heard from Cook that there's a new gentleman expected tonight," she says, her eyes gleaming with the importance of the news. "Apparently quite wealthy, a banker or some such." Mrs. Cartwright was very specific about making sure the best sherry was out. This kind of information is vital. Knowing that a potentially lucrative new client is coming allows the women to mentally prepare the right approach, to calibrate their performance, to meet the expectations of a man of wealth and status. The next knock at the door is for Mary. She rises with practiced grace, the blue silk of her dress rustling softly as she moves. In the hallway, Mrs. Cartwright waits with a gentleman she does not recognize. He is tall, perhaps in his late 30s, with the confident posture of a man accustomed to authority and the well-fed look of prosperity. His clothes are of an excellent quality, not flashy, but tailored with an understated elegance that speaks of true wealth rather than the mere aspiration to it. Mary the madam says smoothly, "This is Mr. Hamilton. May I present Mary, one of our most accomplished young ladies." After the formal introductions, Mrs. Cartwright directs Mr. Hamilton toward her private office to settle the business details. This is standard procedure. The financial arrangements are never discussed in front of the girls, a crucial element in maintaining the fiction of a social encounter. When the madam returns, she gives Mary her instructions with a subtle emphasis. "Mary, perhaps you'd be so good as to show Mr. Hamilton to your room. I believe you'll find you have much in common too." The encounter with Mr. Hamilton is indeed unusual. After the physical act has concluded, he does not immediately withdraw or fall silent. Instead, he props himself up on one elbow and engages her in a genuine, surprisingly intellectual conversation. He asks her how she came to be in this life, not with prurient curiosity, but with a thoughtful, almost academic interest. They discuss economics, societal hypocrisy, and the rational choices women make in a world that offers them so few. For a brief time, she is treated not as a body, but as a thinking being with a perspective worth hearing. When the time he has paid for comes to an end, Mr. Hamilton expresses his sincere enjoyment of their time together. As he is about to leave, he He takes an additional coin from his waistcoat pocket for the conversation, as much as anything else he says, placing it on the small table beside the bed, rather than pressing it directly into her hand. This small gesture feels profoundly respectful, an acknowledgement of her mind, as well as her body, somehow separating this tip from the initial, more straightforward business transaction. He suggests he might return the following week, an offer she accepts with unusual sincerity. Alone again, Mary begins the automatic, methodical process of restoring the room to order. As her hands work, her mind processes the unusual encounter. The genuine intellectual engagement was a refreshing and rare occurrence in this life. Most men, she knows, want a fantasy, not a real connection. Yet, she is careful not to read too much into it, not to build a narrative of some special understanding. He was still a customer who paid for her time and her body. This clear-eyed realism is a crucial defense mechanism, protecting her from the dangers of false hope and misplaced emotional investment. By 11 o'clock, a natural lull has fallen over the house. The early evening customers have all departed, and the later ones, those coming from the city's theaters and gentlemen's clubs, have not yet begun to arrive. This brief quietude is a welcome respite. The girls gather in the large, warm kitchen for a light supper and a restorative cup of tea. The main cooking for the day is long over, but cook has left out bread, cheese, and cold meats for them to help themselves. They sink gratefully into the chairs around the scarred, wooden table, their bodies tired from the evening's work. The peaceful interlude is shattered when Mrs. Winters appears in the kitchen doorway, her expression more severe than usual. "They're here," she announces, without preamble. 6 gentlemen from the club dinner. Mrs. Cartwright wants everyone in the parlor immediately. A collective, quickly suppressed sigh ripples through the group. Professional duty reasserts itself as they set aside their plates and drain their teacups. In the parlor, the new arrivals are louder and less restrained than the house's usual clientele. Their formal evening, we're already showing the effects of a long, bibulous dinner. After a complex process of negotiation orchestrated by the madam, Mary is paired with one of the younger men from the group, a man named Edward, who is clearly feeling the effects of his wine. The encounter is entirely unremarkable, a stark contrast to her earlier engagement with Mr. Hamilton. Edward is neither particularly pleasant nor especially difficult. He is simply too affected by alcohol to prolong the matter or to request anything unusual. When it is over, he quickly falls into a light, snoring doze beside her in the rumpled bed, leaving her to lie still in the warm, heavy air of the room. After Edward leaves, she methodically performs the now familiar routine of restoration. As she works, the accumulated weight of the long day settles into her awareness. From the early morning, awakening in the cold, through the day's chores, the anxiety of the doctor's visit, and the multiple, varied client encounters of the evening, she has been performing constantly. A profound physical and mental fatigue washes over her. It is not an unpleasant feeling, but rather the deep, satisfying tiredness that comes after a day of sustained and challenging work, a clear signal from her body and mind that rest is now required. Returning downstairs, she finds the parlor empty, except for Mrs. Cartwright, who is making notes in her account book. The madam looks up, her shrewd eyes assessing Mary's weary appearance in a single glance. "I believe that's all for tonight, Mary," she says, her own voice tinged with fatigue. "The last gentlemen have gone, and I don't expect more at this hour, especially with the weather turning." A wave of profound relief flows through Mary at these words. It is official permission to end the workday, to finally shed the heavy costume of her professional persona, and to retire to the privacy of her own bed for genuine rest. She climbs the stairs to the top floor, each step now requiring a conscious effort. The bedroom she shares with Lily, a space no customer ever enters, welcomes her with its familiar simplicity. This room, with its narrow beds and plain cotton sheets, is a true sanctuary. Lily is already there, seated on her own bed in her nightdress, slowly brushing out her long auburn hair. She offers Mary a tired smile, one that carries all the unspoken understanding of their shared life. With a sigh of relief, Mary begins the process of undressing, the removal of the restrictive corset, bringing a feeling of blissful freedom. As they prepare for sleep, Lily's voice comes softly through the quiet, lamplit room. Do you ever wonder what it would be like? A different life? I mean, these late-night philosophical questions are not uncommon, especially when fatigue has loosened the tongue. Mary considers the question as she brushes her own hair. Sometimes she admits, but then I remember what it was actually like. The hunger, the cold. At least here we eat well. We're warm. Lily nods, accepting the pragmatic truth. It is not a choice between good and bad. They both know, but between different kinds of difficult and the different prices a woman must pay to survive. Finally ready, Mary extinguishes the lamp and slips between the cool sheets of her own bed. The horsehair mattress, though lumpy, feels wonderfully comforting to her exhausted body. Outside, a storm has begun, the rain drumming steadily against the window pane. The sound is a soothing lullaby, separating her from the city outside. The day's events begin to loosen their grip on her mind, the faces and voices fading into a general impression of work completed. Her breathing finds its natural, sleeping rhythm, deep and slow, and with each exhale, she sinks deeper into the well-earned oblivion of sleep.